Joined now by Sports Illustrated author, one of the good dudes in the business. He is Ross Dellenger. Delly, how are you, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, before we get to the substance of your article that you just wrote, I want to start with Mike Gundy, because Mike Gundy kind of said the quiet stuff out loud, and he kind of had a rambling presser where he spent 20 minutes on a soliloquy about a whole bunch of different things. And he kind of got to the point where he said, hey, we need to get these guys back in here because we need to get the money rolling back through Oklahoma. Did Gundy, either on purpose or by accident, sort of reveal what's at the heart of college athletics that maybe people at the top levels of the NCAA don't want you to know about?
Well, the thing is, yeah, and I've heard people say that, like he let out the secret, So a lot of us that do college football, and college athletics, we're so deep into it. I mean, it's not really a secret. I mean, what he said, in the way it came out in the middle of a pandemic, probably wasn't wise, and that's why Oklahoma State released their own statement later, clarifying some things, like you'll see sports information departments and athletic departments do. But that should tell you, what he said. Certainly it wasn't probably wise. But at the same time, if you're a football coach, I mean, that's probably what a lot of them are thinking. I mean, they're wanting to get back as soon as possible and do everything they can to get back as soon as possible. These football coaches have a lot of money and they have a lot of time now. And sometimes those two things end up like we're seeing, where we've got Mike Leach of Mississippi State tweeting out images of a noose and having his athletic department, publicly release statements on you of Gundy doing his thing. Dabo expressed, an incredible amount of optimism, and that's great and hope and all. But I think, in a pandemic like it is, in the middle of the outbreak like we're in, you got to be a little more careful with words.
Mm-hmm.
They can be taken in different ways, just because of the sensitive situation that we're all in.
Yeah, can't we all what I said yesterday, Delly, was I need more football coaches to be like Coach O, right? He cuts a PSA for the state, cough in your elbow, take care of the elderly. If you're sick, stay at home anyway. And then he literally goes and holds a press conference with the governor because he knows more people are going to listen to him than likely are going to listen to John Bell Edwards. Can't we all take a lesson from Orgeron, especially college football coaches?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I just saw a new ad that's running with Coach Orgeron in Brent Bankston, the LSU team physician, that is about the stay at home and if you want football to happen, then stay at home. That's a lot of politicians and coaches are sending that message, and that's a great course to take. Is hey, if you want to have football, you want to have things back to normal in the fall, then you have to do it now. You got to do these things, follow these guidelines now. And clearly, over the last couple of days, we're seeing an improvement. It seems like across the nation, there are at least some good signs from some things. And we're about a month into this roughly. And we probably have at least a month more of maybe more like 6 to 8 weeks more, of this more isolation type of thing. So we're not quite. Brian Kelly, of course, compared it earlier today to a football game that we're at halftime, and hopefully he's right. Hopefully we're at least at the halfway mark of this.
Talking to Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated, who put out a terrific article, very well researched, a lot of depth to it. Where, Delly, you talked to a lot of the ADs, Power 5 ADs, Group of 5 ADs. You got a lot of responses, and you kind of basically broke down what football's impact is on college athletics. And I don't know that people really understand. Everyone knows it's the biggest thing. Everyone knows it's how big it is. I don't know that people understand financially just how big college football is, especially at the Power 5 level. You've been at this game for a long time. You've covered football for a long time. Did any of the numbers surprise you when you got a hold of them, or is it kind of in line with what you thought?
Yeah, it's nothing. I guess the biggest surprise was actually a non-football number, and it was you got, FBS is basically split into two divisions in a lot of ways. They're not official, but we think of the Power Five and the Group of Five, and they are, because of money and TV contracts, specifically, they are vastly different. They really are from a financial point. And while the Power Five lean heavily, on football revenue from ticket sales and TV contracts, the Group of Five, and this was the surprise to me, leans so heavy on their own school, their institution, and their state funding. And I'll give you kind of a couple of, give your listeners a few numbers that probably will shock them. But well, first of all, when it comes to football, how Power Fives, I'll take that first. Power Fives and how they rely on football. The average Power Five team made in profit on football last year $28 million, and made in profit on basketball around $5 million, and then lost an average of $17 million on all other sports. Normally at most schools, football and basketball are the only two moneymakers. And now you have baseball in about maybe 5 or less than 5% of Division I programs make a little money on baseball, LSU being one, of course. But usually it's football and basketball. So they lean heavily, those Power Fives, on football, the TV contracts. TV contracts usually, way a Power Five budget's broken down. It's normally on average, you got 25% are football ticket sales, 25% are mainly football TV contracts, 25% donations, and then booster donations, things like that, and 25% miscellaneous other things. So Group of Five, and I'll give you these numbers now, vastly different. About 25 to 30%, sometimes up to 50 or 60% of a Group of Five's budget is from the state in student fees from the institution. And so Group of Five ADs are worried not just about football, because they rely on that too, but they're worried about their school and their enrollment in these student fees in an economic downturn, a recession of some kind. So there's worry across the board, and it's a kind of chaotic time for if you're in college athletics, if you're an administrator or a president, or of course coaches and all that. But the people who have to worry about the money, it's a prickly time.
Absolutely. Talking to Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated, and Dabo came out and said, "Oh well, we're America. We stormed the beaches of Normandy, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to play football on time. I'm not even thinking any other way." I immediately go, "Well, you're dumb then. If you're not coming up with contingency plans, you're dumb." Luckily, the administrators are not dumb. They're the ones coming up with contingency plans. What are you hearing in terms of football without fans, potentially football starting in the winter and going into the spring, football into the summer? What are you hearing in terms of the contingency plans that are being bandied about?
Yeah, they're certainly many options, and we're so far out that these are just kind of floating, nothing necessarily official. The next 3 weeks, or probably 3-4 weeks, are probably going to get a little more, official stuff when it comes to conference commissioners actually seriously talking about adjustments to football. But for now, I think the most practical stuff is starting the season about a month or 6 weeks late into October, in having some kind of truncated or shortened season where you have only conference games, maybe, or you have a full season that starts in October, and you push everything back a month. Basically, bowl season is January, and the playoff season is in February. There is certainly a couple of ADs, one on the record at Oklahoma, Joe Castiglione, mentioned a spring football season. It starts maybe in January, February. That would just it would just add a little more chaos to things, because you're looking at affecting the next football season, 2021. If it pushes on. So what makes the most sense is some kind of shortened or delayed season in the fall.
The interesting thing that you mentioned, and I don't remember which AD you talked to that said it, and this is to me kind of the great variable of it all, is this is mostly being handled state by state. You know, John Bell Edwards put us on a stay-at-home order a full 2 weeks before Texas was put on a stay-at-home order, and Greg Abbott saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to shut down restaurants. And then ultimately 2 weeks later, he says, okay, I am. So Texas is 2 weeks behind Louisiana in terms of their response. We're, a week or two behind New York, and Florida's just now getting into into this whole thing. To me, the most interesting aspect is because there was no unified timetable of the response, the idea that if we go ahead with football in the fall, Louisiana might be free and clear, but Texas, because they're 2 weeks behind us, may not be, and Florida's a month behind everybody, they may not be. I've got to imagine that's throwing some weird variables into all of this planning going forward.
Yeah, every state is independent of each other when it comes to these gathering orders. And that was Ross Bjork from Texas A&M that threw out the thought about, A&M plays Fresno State, I think, early in the year, and he said, look, what if California couldn't start practicing until late August, and in Texas we're practicing in early August or something, and we have to play. And is it fair, and can we even play if they're still under some kind of gathering order? So all these, there's going to have to be some kind of national mandate of some kind, across the board. And that's where you need an NCAA commissioner, really. We don't have one, but, you kind of need somebody across the board to make a rule. But what you're going to have is at least conference commissioners getting together to discuss that and maybe creating something national, because you're right. You have all these these state stay-at-home orders, and they're going to end up being, ending on different times and different timelines, and that definitely throws another curve into all this.
Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated joining us. All right, I'm going to ask you a very unfair question, Ross, and I'll tell you up front that it's unfair. Again, there's so many variables involved in this. Like you said, we're at least a month from probably having any sort of solid information. But put your crystal ball in front of you. What do you see college football looking like this year?
Well, I think right now, and things are changing, it seems, by day, but right now, if you look at the reports that, we have some pretty key developments in how quick, you can test people now, and the infections tapering off, the latest report in early July or so, late June, that you feel like there's going to be a season because of the financial piece to athletic departments. There's going to be a season in some way. It just feels like we might not quite be able to kick off on time. So wouldn't surprise me if there's some kind of delayed season. Wouldn't surprise me if it's a season, maybe not completely without fans, but some kind of limited attendance.
Has this been, obviously it's been the most bizarre offseason any of us can really remember, but did you at any point in time when you were going through school and you were on the beat for LSU for a long time, just think to yourself, you know what, I can't wait till that one time I turn into a pandemic reporter and have to actually report on potential of college football not even existing for a season? This has just been one of the most bizarre set of circumstances for an off season that we've ever seen.
Oh, for sure. I think you probably have to go back to during the war and stuff, and then the first, the flu pandemic back in 1918 to have anything comparable to what's going on now. It's crazy what we're seeing, and I'm kind of getting used to it now after week 4 basically of this, so you're kind of getting a little used to it. But the first week or two, it felt like you were trapped in some kind of film.
Yeah.
Some kind of piece, Hollywood film. It's crazy.
Worst part is I think I finished Netflix. I think,
that's right. Yeah, I'm flying through it as well.
Yeah, I think I finished all of Netflix at this point, so I don't know what's left to do. Everybody good in your fam? Everything good with you, though, Deli? Everybody all right?
Yeah, doing well. Nobody's affected or anything like that.
Good.
So we're good.
Good. Well, stay keep your head down. Keep putting out good work. Again, if you want to read that column from Ross Dellenger at Ross Dellenger on Twitter, really nice piece that he put out, and it's eye-opening in terms of just how reliant upon football college athletics are, especially at the highest level. Ross, thank you for your good work, man.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right. That was Ross Dellenger, Sports Illustrated. Again, at Ross Dellenger on Twitter.